Hey, greetings, friends. Jacque Howard on location, Trenton 365. I'm in historic downtown Trenton, New Jersey. And before we really get into it and who my guest is and why we're sitting down together in his office in this historical space, I want you to be sure that you recognize the original stations that have had the Trenton 365 show. That's WIMG 1300. New Jersey's oldest radio station, and WPHY, and their slew of conglomerate stations that they have now sharing the Trenton 365 show in Mercer County, New Jersey, Camden County, New Jersey, and Philadelphia County in Pennsylvania. Big shout out to all the new folks who are listening and tuning in. Stay tuned. We'll be coming through with Jacque's R.E.A.C.H, Recreation, Environment, Art, Civics, and Health, and we'll be sitting down with the elected officials as well as the public agencies so that we can get information out to the average person so that they realize that civic engagement is how we build a better community for everyone. Now, with that, under Jacque's R.E.A.C.H, under civics, I do a lot of faith-based work. And I say faith-based because it's not just Christian who I'm working with, not just Jews or Hindus or Sikhs or Muslims or any other denomination. We are human beings first. And I say that again, we are human beings first. And it's important for us to recognize that we have been created and that there's something to do with us coming together during this creation and figuring out how we can build a better community for everyone. So we have to go beyond what we see, beyond the economics, etc., and get to the root of what's happening. And I'm excited to introduce those of you for the first time who have not met Pastor Rupert Hall. You're going to get a chance to meet him today and then hear about what he has going on right now in historic downtown Trenton, New Jersey. An amazing event that he's a part of with the Poor People's Campaign. And for those of you who don't know about the Poor People's Campaign, you'll be able to get some understanding about the organization and how you can get connected in New Jersey to the Poor People's Campaign, specifically the Trenton chapter. And in addition to that, he's going to be going on the road and he's going to report back on what he experienced with the Poor People's Campaign. With that being said, Rupert A. Hall, thanks for allowing me to come back into your office, your sanctuary, in your sanctuary.
Hey, thanks, Jacque. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Awesome.
Glad to have you.
Fantastic. So let's get started and talk about briefly about what brought you to Turning Point, what is Turning Point, how long it's been here, etc. And then let's get into talking the most about the Poor People's Campaign.
Okay, real quickly, Turning Point is a combination of two very old Methodist churches here in Trenton. Back in 2007, First Church, which was located here at 15 South Broad Street, and St. Paul's United Methodist Church down at 505 West State Street, they merged and became and chose the name Turning Point, piggybacking off of the concept that the Battle of Trenton was the turning point, is considered a turning point in the Revolutionary War. You know, so much so that we're looking at Turning Point today, United Methodist Church, as being a turning point in people's lives. You know, I originally came to Turning Point as the district lay leader. I was teaching a new members class back in 2007. Became a member, and I was called into the pastoral ministry in 2013. In 2013, my first appointment was at Groveville United Methodist Church, which is located in Groveville, New Jersey. And those of you who may know Groveville, you may say, how did that go? Mm-hmm. Well, it went well because my congregation, I like to say, was 125% Caucasian, and I was the pastor. But on my third year, we were celebrating Black History Month. In 2016, I was called the pastor here at my home church, Turning Point United Methodist Church, and I have been here since July of 2016. You know, that sort of thing. We do a lot of things here. We try to live into the reality of being a relevant church with a heart for the people. That extends beyond Sunday morning services. To live into that reality, we are actively involved in various feeding ministries. On Saturday morning, for instance, we partner with Showing Up for Racial Justice, or SURGE. And this past Saturday, we served 200 high breakfast meals. On Wednesday afternoons, we serve about 300 meals provided by the Trenton Area Soup Kitchen. And today, we receive food for grocery bags from the Mercer Street Friends food bank, in which we will distribute this month upwards of 150 to 200 bags of groceries. We believe that beyond the food and the clothing, the groceries, we believe that this is a tangible expression of the love of Christ. It's one thing to say, I'm hungry, and for the religious person to say, bless you, I'll pray for you. No, I'm hungry, here, let me feed you. Or I'm naked, here, let me provide you with some clothing. Prayer is good, but as Fannie Lou Hamer said in 1964, as she was being rejected by the Democratic National Committee in Atlantic City, she was heard to say, prayer is good, but after you pray, you get up and do something. And all too often in religious circles, we pray, and as long as we pray, we seem to satisfy ourselves. But it's more than that. The God that I serve, my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, spent more time in the street with undesirable people than he did with the church folk. And if you read the Bible just in the cursory manner, you'll find that most of his criticisms were against church folk. So I'm not that smart, but I say, well, if that's how Jesus worked it, let me see if I can work it that way. And that's been my rubric. Worship is good. Praise and worship is good. I love singing. I'm a singer. I play the saxophone. I love hearty, uplifting worship. But that's just being what I call being in the huddle. In the football game, you go to the huddle, you excite yourself, you get your plays, and then you leave the huddle to go and run the plays. You don't see any football team go into the huddle and just stay there. As church folk, we have to start getting out of the huddle, and going in, and sometimes the plays work, sometimes they don't work. But just because the play doesn't work, you come in, you try something else. And in delivering and being a vehicle and a conduit for the love of Jesus, that's what it's all about, that sort of thing.
I love how pastors use the analogies of things that they're passionate about, like sports and, and music and so forth, like an orchestra. Like everybody has to play their particular part. That's all.
You mean the saxophone player can't play the tuba part? Wow, how would that sound? There you go.
Spot on. And you're doing it in ministry. You talked about Turning Point being very focused on food,
correct,
nourishment of the body, the physical body, but then also the clothing. Right. You mentioned some partners, Mercer Street Friends, the Soup Kitchen, etc. Right. You're located right on on Broad Street, correct. 206, literally steps away from where the battles of Trenton took place, etc. Can you talk about how that mindset of revolutionary war taking place here, how that ties into how ministry has to be done, how we have to be progressive in what we're doing?
We have to be progressive, and we have to meet people where they are. All too often, religious folks will say this, or they act like this: get yourself cleaned up, stop doing this, stop doing that, and then we'll consider you're coming into these four doors. True ministry, as I see it, says going out to meeting the people where they are. But pastors, some of them do drugs, that's where they are. Pastors, some of them are alcoholics, that's where they are. Pastors, some of them have criminal records, that's where they are. Every time Jesus encountered someone who wasn't inside the synagogue, they had a story. Everybody has a story. I have a story. Jacque, you have a story. But we do not allow, and we do not elevate our stories above the story of someone else. Now, in ministry, I'm finding out that you meet people, and it's sort of simple. People, first off, people in Trenton and large big cities have lost hope. Because they've been treated as less than human. They've been treated as a statistic. And I'm finding one revolutionary thing, if you want to talk about revolutionary, is to walk up someone that doesn't look like me, that doesn't smell like me, that's not educated like me, that looks like they fit the profile of someone that may do something to me. You walk up to them and say something revolutionary. Hi, what's your name? And I'm finding that revolutionary type of approach to someone, you can see a physical change in their demeanor, because what's happening is you're identifying that person as a fellow human being. as a fellow human being who's walking this journey of life, and his journey may have taken him this way or her this way, but he's still a fellow human being. And a person's name gives them humanity, that sort of thing. So when I ask someone their name, and then I tell them what my name is, and then we say, how you doing? How's life? That sort of thing. And invariably I'll say, because I'm a Christian pastor, when was the last time you went to church? And then they give me their story, and the stories are I used to go to church a lot, but what happened? Well, I got in the street, or I used to go to church a lot, but the church hurt me. I used to go to church a lot, or I never went to church, and then at first I tell them, as you're out here getting a meal today with your fellow congregates, this is church. Because church is not this building. It's a state of mind, and it's in your heart, that sort of thing. So we, and especially in mainline denominations, we are too hung up on the real estate. We are too hung up on the real estate. In the book of Acts, it was house churches. They were all together. They came together as one on one accord. When Constantine adopted Christianity as a state religion, we took on this institutional approach to the dispensation of religion. And that's where we lost the true meaning of what it means to be in fellowship together, one for another, as is in the book of Acts. So, and we're going through these challenges here in the Methodist Church and in other mainline denominations. So I believe that if we dial it back a little bit and start considering what the concept of church is all about, we'll leave the real estate and we'll go out into the streets. There are a lot of churches, even in my denomination, that say, we're going to go on a mission trip this summer. We're going to hop in a church van and go to Appalachia. We're going to build some houses and build some steps. Or we're going to hop on a plane. We're going to go to the Caribbean. I've told my congregation here at Turning Point, we are blessed. We are blessed because the mission field is on our front steps. And that's a blessing. We don't take any gas. The mission field is right here. And what happens is, I believe that God places you and plants you for a place that he intends for you to be. So planted here compels us to say, if we're in the mission field, what are we doing to let the people see who Jesus really is? Not religion. Someone, one of my friends I went to school with down in Baltimore, he said, says, I'm paraphrasing, Rupert, I don't like religion. I had to text him back. I don't like religion either, because in large part, religion as it is constituted, as it is practiced, separates people from Jesus. It creates a barrier. And I shudder to think how many people will not see who Jesus really is because of the church. And the church holds itself up as being a representation of Jesus, and they do a lot of un-Jesus-like things, to the point where when I get really convicted, I said, I'm not going to call myself a Christian anymore, because that term has been co-opted. I'm going to refer to myself as a follower of Jesus. That is laser-like, because just as a follower, well, what is Jesus doing? The whole the adage, WWJD, it's sort of but it's real. That sort of thing. Because every single day, those of us who profess to be followers of Jesus, we should be striving to be more like Jesus today than we were yesterday. There are some days we do good, and some days we have a lot to ask for forgiveness. But that's our goal. That's our goal. And Lord, help me to be more like you today than I was yesterday. And to me, that's revolutionary, because the message of following Jesus has been lost in institutionalism. Where too many people are putting their trust, hope, and faith in the institution, in the denomination, as opposed to their faith in Jesus Christ. And that goes for any, I played golf last week down in Myrtle Beach with a Muslim brother, and we agree that through the three major religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, I suggest that we have 85% in agreement. We disagree who Jesus is, but when it comes to serving God's people.
The spirit of the
Of
faith.
doing
Yeah.
faith.
Yep.
We can agree on a whole lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But what has happened in human dynamics, people who seek power will use the differences to cause division. And as you cause division, power inures to you. So I'm going to keep the division going. I'm not going to focus on the commonality, because if people realize, wake up, oh, that's just like me. Oh, I believe that too. Oh, we have a lot that we agree upon. Then it'll be more difficult to amass power. That's a long answer to a short question, but
long and short of it, let me just double check. Are you looking over my shoulder here?
No,
Here's why I say that, because that is exactly the impetus behind why I do civic engagement radio. Is for us to get to the point where folks can recognize, what is Pastor Rupert like?
Right.
What is at the core of who he is? Why is he here?
Right.
Because, like you said, the institution of our faith, and I worship as a Christian as well.
Right.
I'm ordained as an elder, and as a Presbyterian,
Right.
grew up as a Baptist.
Okay.
The Spirit may not always be moving in these, not necessarily here, but inside walls.
Correct.
And it's not just on a Sunday or a Saturday or a Wednesday when we're worshiping, it's every day, which is, why I think we who are followers of Jesus often recognize that it's not just those days. It's a relationship. It's ongoing.
It's a relationship.
When you're up, when you're down, guidance, support, accepting chastisement that sometimes comes in the form of your friends or your family, and recognizing that the whole of this is for the greater good of who we're trying to be. We could talk about that for a while, but I want to make sure that we get to the meat of the Poor People's Campaign.
Mm-hmm.
I had the fortune of meeting Reverend Barber and talking to him briefly many years ago, and to see where the Poor People's Campaign is, and to see that you're connected to it. And it's right here in the historic downtown city of Trenton. How do we talk about the basics of it for the person who has no idea what the Poor People's Campaign is, who it's for, etc., how it started? And then let's talk about what's happening this weekend, because that's pretty powerful.
Okay.
What you've got coming up.
Let's go back. Let's turn back the hands of time. Back to Dr. Martin Luther King. In and around 1967, 1968, he planned a Poor People's March on Washington to bring attention to the economic plight of poor and oppressed people. In terms of low salaries, poor housing, no access or limited access to proper health care, the whole shooting match of what poverty looks like in America. We know on April 4th, 1968, his physical life was taken down in Memphis. But his colleagues, Dr. Ralph Abernathy and his ilk, they continued. They were hoping for about 2,000 people to show up, but much more than 2,000 people showed up down in 1968 at the first Poor People's March. Fast forward, we protested. We now got Martin Luther King Day, where we're celebrating Martin Luther King, celebrating his life and legacy. But if you just look at what people do on Martin Luther King's Day, you would think that Martin Luther King's sole purpose was to pick up trash.
Yeah.
Because everybody says, let's go pick up trash. Let's have a day of service. But Dr. Barber said, no, back in 2016 or 17, he said, let me pick up this baton. Let me pick up the baton of Dr. King, and we're going to galvanize poor and low-wage people. We're going to galvanize them to be a voting bloc, if you will, that the politicians must listen to. We're going to galvanize a voting bloc that the politicians will listen to, because they found out that across this country there are many, many close elections, that if more poor and low-wage people voted, that they could change the tide of a particular election. Here in Trenton, for instance, the election in the North Ward was won by one vote. And you look at the percentages of the 42 thousand eligible voters, only 6,000 or 7,000 people voted. But going back to the Poor People's Campaign, we are seeking not a minimum wage, but a livable wage, and that is defined from a more realistic perspective, because we determine that unlike the numbers that the government produces, we have about 140 million in poverty or under the poverty line. And when you look at what it costs, for a reasonable apartment, not home insurance, but car insurance, a car payment, food for a family of four, we're looking at a number far in excess of what the government standards are. We're looking at also access to health care. We find out that during COVID, we estimate that about 300,000 people died, not because of COVID, but because they did not have access to health care. So in that COVID death number is about 300,000 people that they did not live only because they did not have access to health care. Those of us who were fortunate to have access to health care, when we caught COVID, there were a lot of things that we could do, we had access to, but we have determined that 300,000 people died because of lack of health care. Also, we find that poverty is the fourth leading cause of death in America. We talk about gun violence, we talk about cancer, but poverty, by our statistics, shows that it is the fourth leading cause of death in America. And it's not a death by natural causes. A lot of times it can be preventable, because we also have identified what we consider policy murder. And policy murder is a term which is used for those policies that are passed at state legislatures or in federal legislatures, which inure to the benefit of the rich and powerful, but they increase the burden and the oppression of the lower income and lower wage people. Just across the river in Philadelphia, there's a challenge with the workers at the stadiums. The food giant has the concessions at both the vet and the link, not the vet, the CBT, where the baseball, the football stadium, and where the Sixers play. They're all treated as seasonal employees, so that their hours are not aggregated, so that they are not entitled to benefits. So if I'm working, I will work at the baseball stadium, then I'll go to work at the football stadium, then I'll go to work at Wells Fargo Center, and each time I'm treated as a seasonal worker, thereby not making me eligible for benefits. And that's a major fight. And that's just an example of policy murder, and they're allowed to do that. We also find that our military budget, defense is necessary. Defense is absolutely necessary. But if 4 to 5% of the military budget was diverted into social service agencies, there would be a marked improvement in the quality of life of our citizens who are poor and low wage. Now, and another thing that we find, that the system has convinced a lot of middle class people, a lot of poor people, that they're middle class. But in point of fact, if you miss 1 or 2 paychecks, people will be scrambling, that sort of thing, because the high cost of everything, and you will rarely hear the politicians talk about the poor. They always talk about the middle class, about a thriving middle class, but they've allowed the land-owning rich controllers of the economy to divert many of the jobs, away from the shores of America, such that right now our jobs are going wanting, and the traditional middle class is disappearing. We're getting to a point where we're going to be rich or we're going to be poor. Back in 2014 or early in the 2000s, Janet Yellen had a testimony before Congress. I don't know what role she had then, but her speech was, what is the most dangerous aspect of the U.S. economy? and her paper presentation was the most dangerous aspect was the growing gap, the growing income gap between the rich and the poor. And I'll shoot it to you someday. I still have it on my computer.
Yeah.
So
with that, I want to bring it back because again, these conversations that I'm doing on location is something that I'm offering up to many politicians, faith leaders, nonprofit leaders, small business owners via the Trenton 365 community calendar. There's a whole new marketing campaign that we're doing. It's going to go out through WIMG and WPHY, and the idea is, how do we take this micro media that's happening in central New Jersey, Mercer, and Bucks County, and now thanks to PHY, I'm able to be in Camden County and also Philadelphia County in Pennsylvania. How do we start populating and building up the cream of the crop, so to speak, and saying, hey, what would it look like if like-minded, same strategy organizations, small businesses, for-profits, nonprofits started working cohesively together? And then started saying, hey, what about if we aligned ourselves in some sort of a way where we said, hey, we're going to address one or two things, not necessarily something new or something big, but something that already has some momentum, such as what I'm doing with bicycling and ADA compliancy. What would it look like if we started really pushing out a campaign to talk about safe routes to school, or encouraging people who ride bicycles to follow the laws, and those who see bicyclists riding for them to follow the laws? Or if we start saying, hey, what would it look like if we had curb cuts throughout our municipalities instead of just in different pockets? Those are some of the things that we can get aligned behind that are quality of life things that are going to change. We take faith communities like where I am here today at Turning Point. We want to make sure that everyone who's going to be coming here worshiping has everything that they need, whether that means a roof over their head, their health is in a good space, and that includes our mental health. Let's really have those conversations. And then do they have a chance to thrive and to succeed? And then we can start building out, hey, what does that look like if we start saying, now we've got two different agencies talking together, like Pastor Rupert said with the food, we've got Mercer Street Friends and the Soup Kitchen. So now we've got all this momentum happening, not necessarily, a salad or anything like that, but something where everybody gets, like a salad, where everybody gets to be themselves, but together we're enjoyed as one. So if you want to be a part of that, if you want to do some advertising, you want to do some marketing, you want to reach a larger audience, you want to sit down like I am with Pastor Rupert and hear more, make sure you reach out via Trenton 365, and that's the numbers, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter /X, and TikTok. Now, Pastor, this weekend,
okay,
big event happening, Poor People's Campaign. Let's talk some details about that.
Okay, on June 29th.
29th. I'm sorry I got the date wrong. Not the 29th, or not this weekend.
Not tomorrow.
Not tomorrow, but you're going to see this before the 29th.
Right.
So make sure I'm going to try to get it out in a couple different ways so that if you want to go, wink, wink, Pastor's got some information about how you can get involved with that.
Correct.
All right, so Pastor,
on
29th.
On June 29th, people from across the country are going to descend upon Washington, D.C. for a Poor People's Campaign rally headed by Dr. William Barber. The rally is scheduled to take place between 10 o'clock and 3 p.m. And there'll be a number of speakers, but we'll be highlighting all of the issues that beset poor and low-wage people. Here in New Jersey, there are 3 buses that we're seeking to fill. We're buses leaving from Newark, a bus is leaving from New Brunswick, and a bus is leaving from here in Trenton at the train station. The seating is for 54 passengers on a first-come, first-served basis, and the registration will be found online at njppc.org. And I have no problem in doing this. Give me a call at 856-873-1465, and I can direct you to the proper registration, because if you're not registered, you'll be put on a wait list. Right now, the bus is maybe 1/4 filled, but I told my fellow committee members, the last minute is going to be a mad rush, and people are going to say, oh, I was going to register, but I kept putting it off. Too bad. We're planning to leave the train station at 6 p.m. The rally will conclude about 3 o'clock.
6 a.m. 6 a.m.
Thank you. 6 a.m. We're leaving at 6 a.m. The rally will conclude at about 3 p.m. on Saturday. And as soon as we can get everyone to the bus, we're coming back to Trenton. Now, because of the logistics, it looks like we'll be leaving D.C. about 4:30-ish. Because from the rally, there are going to be shuttle buses and what have you. And right now we have bag lunches confirmed, but we're also confirming other snacks. But it's going to be a very informative day. It's going to be a day where you can see firsthand what poverty looks like across the country. And a good thing that Dr. Barber is doing, when you say poverty in America, you automatically think black and brown. But what poverty looks like in America, it's more Caucasian than people want to admit, that sort of thing. And when Dr. King, back 52 years ago, started to get traction from our white brothers and sisters who were low income and low wage, they started to scratch their heads and said, from a economic perspective, we have a lot in common, And I've always held that racism is an economic construct. In 1692, when the first boatloads of our ancestors came over, it was to ensure and uplift the economic status of the landholders here in America. When the Civil War started, it wasn't about Southern pride. It was about protecting the financial wherewithal of the rich cotton barons that had been making a lot of money, even to the point of the Revolution, where Robert Morris was a major trader in the cotton trade. Robert Morris financed a lot of the Revolutionary War. Robert Morris was a friend of George Washington, and Robert Morrisville is named after him. So from day one, this slavery and racism thing has been an economic proposition. When the Europeans first came to these shores and they saw the Native Americans and they said, "Oh, we've discovered it," was economic because they saw free land. So if you start looking at racism from an economic perspective, all of a sudden the black and white and brown starts to fade and the green starts to become very prevalent. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that the power structure doesn't want to see is people of European descent start to realize that we may have come over on different boats and ships, but we're in the same boat now. So Dr. Barber brings all of these people from diverse backgrounds. And one thing I loved about him, we have people who I may disagree with on some issues, on some political issues. I may disagree with them on some theological issues. I may disagree with them with regard to some issues regarding human sexuality. Dr. Barber says, that ain't for the discussion in here. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about the plight of poor people, whoever they are, wherever they are, and whatever group they're in. So, and if you want to have those, it's not for right here. So he really sets the tone, and he really makes sure that we are focused on the plight of poor people. Here in New Jersey, we've had a challenge. The Poor People's Campaign has been up and running since, say, 2016, but it has been, it has been dominated by people from upper central and northern New Jersey, and it's been dominated by people who are not necessarily attuned to the plight of black and brown people. And that's not a criticism, because we do have some environmental issues. We do have labor issues, but the plight of black and brown people has not been addressed. So going forward, we're seeking to making sure that, we have Caucasians who are poor, but we have a few black and brown people who are poor also. So I'm making a major effort to get what we refer to as impacted people who may be in poverty, maybe they have mobility issues, whatever. I want them to get on. I don't want just people who are heading the very good institutions, to be on the bus. I want people from the grassroots to be there too.
Great.
And the fare is free.
Awesome. Now, with that being said, I want to make sure that people follow up after. So what Pastor Rupert is going to do is he's going to report back. After he returns, we're going to sit down and do this again and hopefully have someone who goes on the trip as well to share about the experience, because for posterity's sake, we have to do this.
Correct.
We have to document what is happening today for the future generations. With that being said, can you share contact information one more time and when services are?
Services here are at 9:30 on Sunday morning. We have Bible study at Thursday at 5:30 online. And we have a prayer service on Wednesdays at 9:30 a.m. With regards to the Poor People's Campaign, www.njppc.org. And I don't mind doing this if it gets me into trouble.
Sure.
My phone number is area code 856-873-1465. I'll be happy, if you leave a message that you want information about the Poor People's Campaign, just leave it and I will return the call as soon as possible. I do serve as one of 3 tri-chairs here in the state of New Jersey, and the Poor People's Campaign has the potential of galvanizing a silent voice that has gone silent for too long.
Fantastic. Pastor Rupert A. Hall, Turning Point Church here, historic downtown Trenton, about a quarter of a block away from Mill Hill Park. When you sign up for Take My Tour of Trenton on Facebook, I'll walk you over and introduce you to Pastor Rupert. I'm Jacque Howard. Remember, it's always about justice, peace, and humility. All right.
Is that it? Okay, I'm leaving. I'm not going to be the pastor anymore.
What?
I got caught in a political wicket.